Silence your words. Awaken your heart. Imagine for a moment that every word you speak carries weight, not just in sound, but in energy. Now imagine what would happen if, just for a day, you said nothing at all. No explanations, no justifications, no empty conversations. What if the silence you feared was actually the key to awakening the deepest parts of yourself? Today, I want to take you on a journey, not to speak more, but to feel more, to silence your words and awaken your heart. We live in a world that never stops talking. Every day, we are bombarded with conversations, notifications, advertisements, opinions, and advice, all clamoring for our attention. In this constant flood of noise, most of us have lost the ability to simply be with ourselves. We have become so accustomed to filling every moment with words, whether it's on social media, in meetings, or even in casual chatter, that we rarely experience the power of true silence. But silence is not the absence of life, it is the presence of something far greater. When you allow yourself to step away from the endless chatter, you start to notice the subtle rhythms of your own existence. You begin to hear the thoughts and feelings that have been buried under the weight of constant expression. Silence gives you a chance to reconnect with the parts of yourself that words cannot touch. It is in these quiet moments that clarity emerges. You begin to realize how much of what you say is reactive, habitual, or unnecessary. Most of the time, we speak to fill gaps, to avoid discomfort, or to seek approval, rather than to express truth. And yet, when you stop, even for a little while, you create space for authenticity. You start listening to your own heartbeat, your own intuition, and your own needs. Silence allows you to distinguish between the voice of your ego, the one that insists you must explain, justify, or prove yourself, and the voice of your soul, which communicates in whispers, not shouts. It is in these whispers that you find insight, direction, and self-awareness. Over time, practicing silence strengthens your emotional resilience. You begin to respond to situations rather than reacting impulsively. You notice the patterns of your thoughts and emotions, and you understand that the urge to speak constantly is often a mask for fear, insecurity, or impatience. By embracing silence, you reclaim control over your inner world. You start to understand that your words do not define you. Your presence, your awareness, and your ability to feel deeply do. And as you continue to practice this, you notice a profound shift in the way you interact with the world. You become more attentive, more compassionate, and more grounded. You find that meaningful communication does not require constant talking. It requires listening, observing, and being fully present. Silence, once feared, becomes your most powerful tool, allowing you to access wisdom and clarity that noise could never provide. When you embrace silence, you naturally become a better listener, not just to others, but to yourself. Listening is a skill that is far more powerful than talking, yet most people overlook it. In our noisy, hyper-connected world, everyone is so focused on making their point, sharing their story, or being heard that the art of truly listening has almost disappeared. And yet it is in listening that the deepest connections are formed. When you stop rushing to fill every silence with words, you start to notice the subtle nuances, the pauses, the tone, the energy behind what people are saying. You begin to see beyond the words themselves into the intentions, the feelings, and the vulnerabilities that are often hidden beneath the surface. Listening in this way is not passive. It is active, deliberate, and transformative. It allows you to understand others in a way that speaking alone never could. You begin to pick up on patterns in conversations, understand unspoken needs, and sense the emotions that others may not even be aware of themselves. At the same time, learning to listen deeply to yourself becomes equally profound. Most of us are deaf to our own needs because we are too busy reacting to the world. We talk to justify our choices, to reassure ourselves, or to distract ourselves from discomfort. Silence, however, creates a space where you can hear your own thoughts without interference. You begin to understand what truly matters to you, what your heart desires, and what boundaries you need to set. The more you practice this kind of listening, the more empathy naturally grows. You begin to relate to people not from a place of judgment, but from understanding. You become attuned to the subtle ways people communicate, and you respond with clarity and compassion rather than with impulsive words. And the beauty of it is that this skill transforms every interaction. Conversations become richer, relationships become deeper, and your ability to navigate life with grace and awareness expands. Listening becomes a language in itself, a language of presence, patience, and authenticity. The quieter you become, the more you can hear. And in hearing, you gain access to truths that words alone could never convey. It is in this silence that connection, understanding, and wisdom are born. Emotional intelligence is often spoken about as if it's a skill you can learn from a book, but in reality, it is something you cultivate through awareness, presence, and deep listening, both to yourself and to the world around you. When you embrace silence, you give yourself the rare gift of introspection. Most people live their lives in constant reaction, reacting to stress, to criticism, to circumstances, to other people's expectations. They rarely pause to ask why they feel the way they do, or to observe the patterns behind their emotions. Silence changes that. When you quiet your voice, you amplify the voice of your heart. You begin to notice recurring emotional patterns, the triggers that provoke anger, the situations that spark anxiety, the moments that fill you with joy. You start to understand not just the surface level emotion, but the root causes beneath it. This kind of self-awareness is transformative because it gives you the power to respond rather than react. It allows you to choose your emotional responses consciously rather than being swept away by impulsive habits. Over time, practicing silence builds resilience. You realize that discomfort does not need to be avoided. It can be observed, understood, and managed. You learn to recognize your emotional limits and honor your boundaries. You also start noticing the subtleties in others, the tiny shifts in tone, body language, and energy that reveal more than words ever could. This awareness allows you to navigate relationships with more empathy, patience, and understanding. Silence becomes the laboratory of the soul, where you experiment with your feelings, dissect your reactions, and rebuild your internal world in a more conscious and grounded way. It teaches you that emotions are not enemies to be suppressed or denied. They are messengers, guiding you toward greater clarity and authenticity. The quieter you become, the more attuned you are to the inner workings of your heart. You start recognizing the difference between your ego-driven desires and the deeper, truer impulses of your soul. And as this emotional intelligence grows, your life begins to transform. You communicate more effectively, connect more deeply, and navigate challenges with a calm and centered presence. Silence is not emptiness, it is the space where your emotional power is cultivated, strengthened, and awakened. In that space, you discover the capacity to understand yourself and others in a way that is profound, intuitive, and deeply human. Words are powerful, but they are also fragile. They can convey love, hope, and inspiration, but they can just as easily confuse, mislead, or even harm. Most of us underestimate how often our words dilute the truth or mask our real feelings. We talk to impress, to justify, or to explain, and in the process, we create layers of noise between who we really are and how we are perceived. Silence, on the other hand, is unfiltered. It reveals authenticity. When you stop speaking unnecessarily, when you resist the urge to fill every moment with chatter, what emerges is your presence, the truest version of yourself. And presence is far more compelling than any carefully chosen sentence. Think about the moments that have left the greatest impact on you. The quiet gesture of a friend who truly listens, the supportive glance of a partner, the serene calm of someone who doesn't need to explain themselves. These moments often speak louder than words because they are rooted in truth, in sincerity, and in genuine emotion. Silence forces you to communicate in ways beyond speech, through action, through touch, through attentive observation. It allows the world to see your integrity, your confidence, and your inner strength without the distraction of over-explaining. Moreover, silence teaches patience and discernment. It helps you realize that not every thought needs to be expressed, not every feeling needs to be justified, and not every moment requires commentary. By restraining your words, you create a space where meaning becomes concentrated and deliberate. Each word you do speak carries more weight, more clarity, and more intentionality. Silence also exposes the difference between reaction and reflection. When you stop talking to react immediately, you give yourself the opportunity to process, understand, and respond with wisdom. You notice the emotions behind your impulses, and you recognize the times when speaking would create noise rather than clarity. In relationships, silence is a mirror that reflects your true self and invites others to do the same. It becomes a tool for deepening trust, understanding, and intimacy because it communicates without pretense. Ultimately, words are fleeting, but presence is enduring. Silence strips away all distractions, leaving only what is real, meaningful, and profoundly human. It allows your heart to speak when your mouth cannot, and it ensures that what you do express is rooted in honesty and impact rather than habit or fear. Silence is not passive, it is an active choice, a conscious decision to engage with life differently. Most people think of silence as absence, as something to be endured, but in reality, it is a tool for growth, transformation, and self-discovery. When you stop talking, you give yourself the space to reflect deeply on your life, on your goals, your desires, your fears, and even the habits that have been quietly shaping your behavior for years. In that stillness, you are forced to confront the parts of yourself you usually avoid. You face your discomfort instead of masking it with chatter or distractions. You acknowledge the emotions, the doubts, and the unspoken thoughts that have been driving your decisions behind the scenes. Growth cannot happen in noise because noise numbs awareness. It drowns out intuition, clouds judgment, and keeps you reacting rather than responding. Silence, however, provides clarity. It creates the mental and emotional space needed to see patterns, recognize recurring challenges, and identify opportunities that you may have overlooked. When you embrace it, you start to notice how often you've been acting on autopilot, making choices based on habit, fear, or external expectations. Silence brings consciousness back into every action. It teaches you that the answers to many of life's questions are not found in advice or conversation, but in reflection and observation. In this space, you can analyze, recalibrate, and redirect your energy toward what truly matters. The quieter you become, the more attuned you are to the subtle signs of life, moments of inspiration, fleeting ideas, and opportunities that previously went unnoticed. Silence also cultivates patience, discipline, and self-mastery. By resisting the urge to react impulsively, you build the ability to pause, evaluate, and act with intention. Over time, this practice transforms how you approach challenges, relationships, and personal growth. It shifts your perspective from seeking external validation to trusting your internal guidance. Every decision, every step, and every interaction becomes more deliberate, more meaningful, and more aligned with who you truly are. In essence, silence is a gym for the soul, a place where emotional strength, mental clarity, and self-awareness are trained and perfected. By consciously embracing stillness, you allow yourself to grow in ways that talking, rushing, or over-explaining never could. You awaken a depth within yourself that transforms not only how you see the world, but how the world experiences you. Ultimately, silencing your words is about awakening your heart. It's about connecting to the deepest parts of yourself that often go unnoticed in the chaos of everyday life. Most people spend their energy trying to explain, justify, or defend themselves, and in doing so, they disconnect from what truly matters: their feelings, their intuition, and their sense of purpose. When you choose silence, you create a space where your heart can finally speak. You begin to hear its quiet, persistent guidance, the subtle nudges that have been ignored under the weight of constant talking. In stillness, you discover the parts of yourself that are authentic, unguarded, and deeply alive. Silence allows love, empathy, and creativity to flourish because these cannot be rushed or forced. They require space, attention, and presence. You start to notice the beauty in moments you might have overlooked before. The warmth of someone's smile, the depth of a conversation that needs no words, the gentle rhythm of your own breath. This presence opens your heart in ways that words alone never could. It teaches you that being is more powerful than explaining, that feeling is more transformative than performing, and that authentic connection requires openness, not over-talking. When your heart is awake, you begin to act from a place of alignment rather than reaction. Your choices reflect your true values, and your interactions reflect your authentic self. People are drawn to this kind of energy because it is rare and magnetic. Someone who does not feel the need to over-explain, someone who communicates with presence, someone whose silence carries meaning. Awakening your heart through stillness also allows you to cultivate gratitude, patience, and understanding. You start to see life not as a series of challenges to be verbalized and solved, but as a series of experiences to be felt, absorbed, and honored. The wisdom that comes from this silence transforms how you love, how you create, and how you live. Your relationships deepen, your intuition sharpens, and your sense of purpose becomes undeniable. Silence becomes the bridge between your mind and your heart, between thought and emotion, between who you have been and who you are meant to become. By letting go of the need to constantly speak, to constantly perform, or to constantly explain, you awaken a level of presence and authenticity that is profoundly liberating. In that stillness, you find not emptiness, but a heart that is fully alive, fully aware, and fully capable of experiencing life in its richest, most vibrant form. Silence is more than just the absence of words. It is the presence of truth, awareness, and connection. Throughout this journey, we've explored how stepping away from constant chatter allows us to reconnect with ourselves, understand our emotions, and gain clarity that words alone can never provide. In a world obsessed with noise, learning to embrace stillness is not a weakness, it is a profound act of courage and self-mastery. When you silence your words, you create a space to hear the whispers of your own heart, the subtle guidance of intuition, and the truths that have been hidden beneath the surface of constant distraction. This is where transformation begins, quietly, intentionally, and powerfully. Listening, truly listening, becomes a skill that transcends communication. It is in the silence that we start to understand others on a deeper level, noticing the unspoken, sensing the emotions, and recognizing the subtle energies that words often fail to convey. By embracing silence, we strengthen our relationships, cultivate empathy, and awaken a level of presence that makes every interaction more meaningful. The quieter we become, the more we are able to discern the difference between superficial noise and profound truth, allowing us to navigate life with authenticity, patience, and emotional intelligence. Silence is also the laboratory for our emotional growth. By creating space for reflection and introspection, we can confront discomfort, understand recurring patterns, and respond to life with intention rather than reaction. Every moment of stillness is an opportunity to learn, to recalibrate, and to grow stronger emotionally and spiritually. It is through these quiet moments that we discover the alignment between our thoughts, feelings, and actions, allowing us to act from a place of purpose and authenticity. The heart awakens not in explanation or justification, but in observation, awareness, and the willingness to feel deeply without interference. Finally, the ultimate gift of silence is the awakening of the heart itself. It is the stillness that allows love, empathy, and creativity to flourish, that transforms relationships, sharpens intuition, and brings clarity to life's most important choices. When we stop over-explaining and start being present, life itself begins to speak. The world does not need our constant noise. It needs our authenticity, our presence, and the courage to connect deeply. By silencing our words and awakening our hearts, we unlock the fullest potential of ourselves, living a life that is not only heard, but profoundly felt. Thank you, and goodbye. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it inspired you to embrace silence, listen deeply, and awaken the wisdom of your own heart. If you found value in this message, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and hit the notification bell for more content that empowers your mind and soul. Until next time, stay present, stay mindful, and keep awakening your heart. Goodbye and take care.